Namaskar. Welcome to another episode, second episode of Headlines Today. This show actually is very special and thank you so much because last time our first episode was quite well appreciated. But then our there was a technical error. We had to kind of end our show with just after one topic. That was very unfortunate. Um, before I get into the show, I want to tell you one thing. And this is kind of very emotional for us, both Akhilesh and me. This show was supposed to be planned. This show was planned between me, Akhilesh, and Vinodji. Vinod was supposed to be part of the show. We had planned this long back, but since Vinodji was not well and things of that sort, we didn't actually air it because we were just waiting for him to get better and come back. So this actually is show this every time we do the show, it actually reminds us of him. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Akhilesh, how are you? And can we
All
can
good,
we
Sujit.
start this show? I was just
Yes,
reminding our viewers about how we had thought about the show and how it was
yes,
planned. How
yes,
unfortunate it is that today we don't have Vinodji to be part of the
yeah,
third person in this show, the third
yeah.
anchor of this show. Anyway, Akhilesh, the subject today is very interesting. My subject, my part of it. You see, political parties seems to be making more money than businesses in our country. Okay, the richest political party, Akhilesh, and that's the headlines of that I wanted to talk to you about. The richest political party is Bharatiya Janata Party, with a declared asset worth 4,847 crores, 47.78 crores. This is Bharatiya Janata Party. You know what is the interesting part? Guess who is the second most richest party in the country?
I'm
It
sure
is
it's not Congress.
it is not Congress. It is Bahujan Samaj Party with a net asset of 698.33 crores. Congress is third with 588.16 crores. Now, few figures, facts and figures, like we always do. Seven national parties. We have seven national parties in India. Seven national parties put together, the total asset is worth 6,988.57 crores, out of which, of course, like I said, 4,847.78 crores is Bharatiya Janata Party. And we have 44 regional parties in India. Okay, now 44 regional parties. The total asset worth is 2,129.38 crores. And out of which, interestingly, 563.47 crores is Samajwadi Party. TRS from Telangana is 301.47 crores, and AIA DMK is 267.61 crores. This are the three top parties in the 2,129 crores of total assets. This is broadly what it is. Now, Akhilesh, before I get into this, one point I wanted to make, and then I would like your reaction on this. See, you know, just the other day I was reading somewhere that Election Commission has even put a figure to the samosa that you can charge. So samosa in an election, if you are giving your karyakartas, your workers, should be charged X. Tea should be charged Y, and we are getting into such nitty-gritties. Somewhere down the line, it looks, I'm not saying it is hypocrisy, but to me it looks like hypocrisy, for the simple reason that, Akhilesh, tell me what is the point of having all these 2 rupees vada pav, 1 rupee samosa and all that, when the parties are making 4,000 and 5,000 crores. That's one end of the story. Second end of the story, where is this money coming from, and why is this money coming from? Why does a political party need this kind of funding? Third important point is, isn't it not damaging our democracy? Isn't it not damaging our democracy? You see, I am a political party with humongous amount of fund. I mean, where is 4,847 of Bharatiya Janata Party and 588 of Congress? Now, I am not necessarily saying that Congress is clean and all that. Congress is, poor guy, has less money and all that. If Congress was in power, Congress would have had this money, and possibly Bharatiya Janata Party would have been in Congress's place. So I am not getting into all that party things and all that. But the point that I'm trying to talk about is our democracy. I'm talking about our democracy, Akhilesh, which I think is bad, because if one party has so much money, the chances are that party, that particular party, has tremendous influence on the election, tremendous influence on the outcome of the election. If a party has so much money, that party can start all sorts of things: horse trading, putting more money into election, huge campaigning, phenomenal amount of influencing the voters. All of this can happen. So while the election commission says 2 रुपए का वड़ा पाव के ऊपर नहीं बेचना चाहिए, 2 rupees samosa and 1 rupee tea, all that, I don't know, that figure is not right. I'm just blabbering, but but there is a diktat which says that this is the cost that you can spend. While all that is happening, you are allowing a political party to amass such huge assets. I mean, why can't there be a capping on assets? Why can't you ensure that all national political parties have got X amount of assets and that's it? X amount of spending and that's it. Why can't you do that? Why can't we have a equal playing field for everybody? End of the day, that's democracy, isn't it? If you don't give equal play, what is the most important thing that can tilt the things to whoever favor? Is money. And where the moment you are not putting a cap on money, the moment you are not putting a cap on assets, I mean, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? So I find this absolutely ridiculous that we as a country is not thinking about putting a cap on the income of political parties. We as a country is not putting a cap on how much a party earns. Because the more a party earns, the more a party will spend. And where will they spend? On elections. So this is my point, Akhilesh. Akhilesh, what do you feel?
Sujit, I had a lot of thoughts going on in my mind when you were speaking. Uh, Two data that you did not point out, and that's because figures are my domain, not yours. BJP's share in the total assets at the national level party is 70%. And that of Bahujan Samaj Party, which is the runner-up, is just 9.99%. So you're talking about a 1,000-pound gorilla straddling the Indian political system as far as money is concerned. Now, the second point, Sujit, is this data is not about their income or receipts. It is about their assets. And that is where there are a few issues which are worth looking into. See, it is the Congress which had been in power for, let's say, 65, 70, whatever years we want to call it, but for a large part of the tenure of India as a country. Normally, if you were to equate these parties as corporates, then the balance sheet of an old corporate, which had been, straddling the market share for decades together, should have been by far the heaviest in the lot, despite it not being in power for the last 8 years now. So the point to note here is that this is a buildup of assets which has taken place so rapidly for the Bharatiya Janata Party, despite the fact that it has been in power in just for 8 years in a way. I'm not considering the Bajpayee years just now for the sake of talking. But I'm surprised that the buildup of assets on the Congress balance sheet is a minuscule compared to that of the Bharatiya Janata Party. There could be two reasons for this. The first reason, Sujit, according to me, is that electoral bonds, which have institutionalized donations to the political parties, have really helped them to take money officially. And the second could also be, I mean, I'm talking about the balance sheet of a party that, unlike the BJP, it could be that the Congress did not get its money as a party, it got it to its individuals or leaders. So the leaders probably became rich, the party suffered. And here it could be that they have institutionalized it in such a way that funds come to the party and not to the leaders. So to that extent, BJP becomes a far sounder institution in terms of its processes. I have not yet got into the issue of, the impact of such a heavy tilt in political finances on the overall electoral process. That's a different one. But you have to look at parties as institutions and see what has happened. The BJP, of course, it's not being in power for all these decades has not mattered to it. It has a far heavier balance sheet as compared to the Congress. And that means that it has got far more ammunition to fire when elections come. If this was a corporate again, then Competition Commission of India would be the dominant regulator here before the BJP probably even managed to win another state, because it has got a monopoly virtually in this particular domain. So, very interesting data. Of course, from sheer money power perspective, Sujit, it is a big imbalance between the two parties. If you look at the data of the state parties, of course, Samajwadi Party is the leader there, but its share is just about 24.42% of the total of regional parties. And TRS is also close by. On the other hand, at the national level, there seems to be no competition. 70% share in the political assets of the nation is too big an amount. And that explains why it is such a dominant party, and also why it is always election ready and wanting to contest elections. They've got all the ammo to fire, Sujit.
Absolutely. So, Akhilesh, that's the point we both are making. The fact remains that somewhere down the line, there has to be some kind of a cap. There has to be some kind of a system which makes the playing field even. And just to conclude, you see, the same thing would happen even in large corporates, isn't it? When you have large corporates who are marketing large products, for instance, in the cola market. See, a local cola brand will never be able to sell their product for the simple reason that you have the Pepsis and you have the Coca-Colas of the world that will squeeze you out because they have the kind of marketing money they have and the kind of sales money they have. So same thing goes with politics, because that's how ultimately it is going to be, Akhilesh. So that's how we conclude our headline number one. Akhilesh, headline number two, again over to you.
Sudhir, one point in headline number one, which is,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, probably the BJP has got all these assets in the last 8 years because it has been in power. And
Hmm.
maybe if this data had come when the Congress was in power, it could have been a little different. That's just the thought that I'm leaving behind. My headline, Sujit, starts with, an interesting data. Uh, all the statistics say that the middle class has been suffering. A lot of the middle class has gone into poverty in the last 2 years. There is a huge increase in inequality. Household income has been suffering. Unemployment is huge. People are sitting at home. There have been no jobs. Incidentally, just to tell you, in the last 5 years, the number of people employed in this country has remained stagnant at 40 crores. So the jobs have just not been there. And most important, in the last 2 years, gold loans have become one of the most preferred mode of household lending. Just Muthoot Finance in 1 year has lent almost 10,000 crores by way of gold loans. That is the kind of demand which has come from the household sector today, which is cash trap. And thus it has been pledging its goal, giving it as a security in order to raise emergency funding. After all, gold is one of the most sensitive assets that an Indian household holds, and they have been parting with that. That's been the situation. With this background, interesting headline says that gold imports in India in 2021 were the largest seen in the last 10 years, and they touched about 885 tons for the year. In the last 5 years, the average was about 697 tons a year, but in 2021, it was 885 tons. Now, more interestingly, if we get into the figures, in the second quarter of the year, here the second quarter becomes the June quarter, the imports had dipped by 80%. But in the fourth quarter, which is the December quarter, they shot up by 80%. Now, the point to ponder here is, despite the households being so stressed out, how is it that gold imports have shot up so much? And the gold industry expects that now 885 tons plus is going to be the new normal in the coming years as far as gold imports are concerned by India. One bunch of people say that this is now an expression of pent up demand. In the last 2 years, you have had lockdowns and COVID, and marriages were impacted, etc. So now this has been a pent up demand, which shows in the fourth quarter imports shooting up by 80%. I'm not able to correlate these two realities, Sujit, which is households being in such a mess. In fact, let me give further data on the mess in the households. All these microfinance institutions, all those which have been into household lending, they are experiencing high levels of delinquency, Sujit. So are we saying that gold is such an inflexible item for Indian marriages and for our Dashera and Diwali and all those festivals, that even if the household income has gone down, we will still be buying gold? Is it just a pent up demand of one quarter and we will see it now coming back to 650 tons kind of imports a year. That's something to think about. I thought I must bounce this on you, Sujit.
No, no, this is very interesting, Akhilesh, because I'll tell you what, a lot of there has been a huge amount of debate on this one, and I remember Dr. Kumar, Professor Arun Kumar, who in fact I think the both of us were there in that particular discussion, wherein he said that you see the people who are actually purchasing are not even 2% of the population. Akhilesh, the thing is, somewhere down the line, normal people seems to have seems to be having cash paucity big time. Okay, loans are not being paid, emis are not being paid, recovery is becoming a big issue. People are going through hell. At another level, like you rightly said, purchase of gold, import of gold is getting is increasing. Mortgage of gold is increasing on the other end. These mortgaged golds are getting sold because these people cannot pay the money. Even that has increased. And at some level, taxes collection also has increased. So, Akhilesh, one is very confused. Exactly हो क्या रहा है? लोगों के पास पैसे हैं कि लोगों के पास पैसे नहीं है? Do people have money or people do not have money? This is a very, very, very intriguing question, Akhilesh.
So I have another data to give you. Post Diwali, when the surveys took place, CMI is on record saying that consumers were unwilling to buy the non essentials, which is white goods, etc. They were largely restricting their spending and purchases to the essentials. And that again shows that pockets were too tight. Money was not there, and they were waiting and postponing all their non essential purchases. Now, how does gold become an essential that they did not postpone that? And they have bought gold so copiously that in the fourth quarter, the demand shot up by 80%. The purchase of jewelry went up by 80%. So I think somewhere the data doesn't match. Maybe uh, gold buying is a must as far as marriages are concerned. Maybe it is that marriages had to take place. There was a pent up demand or a pent up issue of marriages as well as the purchase of jewelry for it. And that's where it went into. Of course, the data doesn't say what was the composition of gold for the sake of investments. But then, gold for the sake of investments today, Sujit, there is an increasing trend where you end up buying gold bonds instead of buying the yellow metal itself. So I don't think that really was the trigger. The trigger largely has been festivals, marriages, and all those occasions. And it leaves me thinking, Sujit.
But tell me, Akhilesh, I go back to my question. What is the situation? Do consumers have money to spend? Do normal Indian have enough liquid cash to spend? Where is this money coming from?
Sujit, the normal Indian is not having the money to spend. I'll quote another data which came from Oxfam, which said that in the last year, last 2 years, in fact, 84% of India's households have witnessed a dip in their household income. And that's purely to do with the prevailing unemployment and lack of livelihood in the country. So this segment, another report which came from Pew last year, a survey of Pew, which said that about 300 million Indians have slipped into poverty
Poverty.
from middle class. Uh, Maybe I'm wrong here, it could be 30 million, but the amount is too huge, have slipped into poverty. And that shows that this segment does not have the income, but then they've still bought gold. That's an intriguing one, and that leaves me thinking.
This is now. I also want to go back on my. Though I'm slightly drifting from the subject. I want to go back on the tax collection. Akhilesh, business nahi ho raha hai. There is no business happening. Okay, we can see it. I mean, they're not like no company claims to be making huge amount of profits. How are these tax collections going up by 100% and 150% and all of that? Where is
So,
this happening?
Sudhir,
How is this happening?
it in fact that data shows the kind of inequality that has shot up in the country. A data that came which said that 1,995 corporates have seen their profits shoot up by 16% last year, and it went up again in 2020. The fact of the matter is that the corporates are having a good time. They have been making large profits. They have been pruning their costs, and they've also been eating into the market share of the MSMEs. And this is the segment which has been paying taxes. The household tax collection, in fact, the number of IT returns filed by households have dipped. So when the government talks about an average 39% increase in collections and tax this year, it is all founded on corporates largely, Sujit.
There has been huge compliance issue, huge number of cases, huge number of notices that have been issued to common men, to small businessmen, to MSMEs by these tax collection agencies. What is that ultimately going to tantamount to? I mean, are we literally squeezing tax out of these MSMEs?
Well, talking in particular of notices that have been coming from the GST department, those have been pretty draconian and they very often result either in closure of an entity or it's downsizing big time because the notices are harsh, very coercive. They go back, delve into the past few years, and the MSMEs just don't have the resources to maybe engage expensive consultants or to pay those taxes and go in disputes. So those notices are taking a toll, particularly on the small unorganized MSME sector, because the big ones like litigation, they have all the money to get into litigation and they just don't mind it. But for the small ones, well, it's a very different story, Suji.
Correct. So that's the way we talk. That's the way we see all these taxes. That's the way we see 100% and 200% and 300% taxes. That's collection. Akhilesh, I wanted to ask you a very pertaining question. Again, I'm drifting a little from the topic here, but I want to ask you a very pertaining question. You see, when a tax notice is issued, or when a tax is a payment order is issued to the taxpayer, tell me, does that go in as tax collected, or in the future? What I meant by that is, in the future, if it is disputed, does that go in as tax collection? The whole amount goes in as tax collection, or only the amount that one has to pay as deposit goes in as tax collected?
So what happens is, suppose hypothetically a tax notice of 100 rupees is issued and you pay 20 against it, only 20 goes in the tax collection.
Acha.
They do not mention that that 20 might get refunded after 2 years because the party has gone in appeal and he most likely will win the case. But this tax accounting is largely a cash based accounting, wherein what goes in the pocket of the government is accounted as tax received. So it has nothing to do with the notice, it has to do with how much they recovered out of you, either voluntarily or through coercive efforts.
Correct, correct, correct. I mean, that's the way it is. So ultimately, this is, whenever one talks, sees a headline where they say 100% tax more, 200% tax more, it is not necessary that the people are doing fabulously well and therefore they are paying taxes and we are oozing
one
out of
one
money. And
segment
you know,
one segment has done well, and that is where the inequality has gone up, and that is where, Sujit, we keep saying that there has been a K-shaped recovery, one arm of the alphabet shooting up and the other arm shooting down.
correct, absolutely correct. Akhilesh, again slightly drifting from the topic. I'm continuously drifting from the topic, so now I'm like gone somewhere else. I'll pull myself back, but since we are on the topic, I wanted to make one very pertaining point again. You see, uh, uh, Nitin Gadkari spoke about uh, doubling automobile manufacturing in India, which is a good thing, which is a very good thing. Okay, he also spoke about therefore doubling the exports of automobile in India. Okay, again the problem here is taxation. Where is this automobile companies coming in? No automobile company in India are happy. Toyota is not happy. They said it. Of course, they retracted after that. They said it. But we all know Tesla. They refused to come into India because they said, listen, tax is not. So everyone is talking about taxes. So where what are we talking about? I mean, where is this? Why aren't we realizing that these taxations are killing the economy? We need to relook at our taxation. Just by decreasing corporate taxes, that doesn't mean that we have won the battle. It doesn't mean that we are inviting every second investor from the across the globe to India. I mean, that's real. I mean, there is a problem. And it is connected to our topic for the simple reason that that's precisely why there is no investment, there is nothing new happening, and till such time there is nothing new happening, a common man will not benefit, Akhilesh. Common man will not benefit. We will have to still take the jewelry and go to the pawn shop and pawn it. And that's precisely what's happening.
So, talking about taxation, Sujit, and in the capacity of being I take the audacity of calling myself as a tax expert. I'll behave like our dear Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and give you an acronym and a slogan. So, what is taxation all about? It is CCC: Complicated, coercive, and confusing.
So you bet, you bet. Um,
So, Sujit, I have a headline for you to answer.
please.
And it has to do with the Supreme Court judgment, which said that those 12 Maharashtra MLAs who were, sacked by the speaker, that was an arbitrary move. Now, we of course see that happening too often. That whenever you are playing party politics on the floor of a legislative assembly or the parliament, with due respect to all the speakers of all the various assemblies, etc., you do have these kind of judgments taking place. I mean, moves happening wherein somebody is sacked and somebody is thrown out just because it suits the party in power. How do you react to this Supreme Court judgment which says that the move was completely arbitrary? And what would be the little history that you would tell us?
I will. I. My submission to this is, Akhilesh, we have to go a little back here. Okay, day on day year after year, assembly after assembly, parliament after parliament, we have been flaunting laws. We have been making a mockery out of our parliament. Rules have been broken. Rules have been broken every day. Okay, while I completely welcome the judgment of the Supreme Court, and it is and rightfully so, but what I do did expect from the Supreme Court, or what I do expect from the Supreme Court, is a permanent solution. Akhilesh, issues are not just about throwing out or banning MLA or MP randomly, which has both happened both in assembly, and it has also happened in the parliament. So it has happened both ways. Okay, it is not just about throwing these or suspending these MLAs. What the problem starts with the actual process of the parliament, and which is what I want to talk about. You see, today you are talking about 1 minute and 2 minutes and 3 minutes of discussion on a bill. 3 minutes of discussion on a bill, and the bill is passed and the bill goes. No parliamentary committee, no discussions, no deliberation, as if every MP sitting in the parliament is an expert in everything. So health, he is an expert, he or she is an expert. Agriculture, he or she is an expert. Infrastructure, he or she is an expert. No parliamentary committee formed, no experts consulted. Okay. Secondly, this concept of 3 minutes and 4 minutes of debate. Akhilesh, what is left of the parliament then? Before I get into laws being broken and therefore people being suspended, which is of course something that should be spoken about, and I want to ask you a basic question of what is left in the parliament if there is no debate, if there is no discussion. What is left in the parliament if a bill just get passed? Then the bill is passed, then the bill is repealed, then the bill is never implemented. Look at the number of bills that were got passed, and look at the bill which and number of bills were actually implemented on ground.
And
I
every
don't even
time the
want.
session gets and every time, Sujit, the session gets truncated also.
Every time the session gets truncated. This is number one. Now, specifically answering your question, Akhilesh, see what happens here is, somewhere down the line, again, I want to take this outside of the parliament, outside of the assembly. You see, ruling dispensation has now started functioning like kings, functioning like monarchies. Okay, see, the ruling party, if he has to, if he wants to, kind of, if he's not very happy with the state government, he catches four of their guys and puts ED cases on them. So there is central agencies going around the state parties. State uses the police force to do the same to central ministers and central party workers and so on and so forth. Same thing happens in the parliament. If I am the ruling party, and if I feel that you are not, saying what I want to say, or what you do is something that doesn't suit my this thing, I suspend you. So what I'm saying is, the concept of law, the concept of statesmanship has been deteriorating, and deteriorating big time. So I am saying this is not just to be viewed from a sheer Supreme Court verdict perspective. I think it has to be viewed from a larger perspective, which is what is happening in the country. And that is something that needs to be corrected, Akhilesh. One case here and one case there will not be any precedence. Like I was reading somewhere that this could be a precedence, this could be something that can be quoted by all courts and all of that. All that is TK, all that is fine, but one case will not make a difference. This has to be seen as a fact that somewhere down the line law is not being practiced. The way parliament has to run, it is not running. The way democracy has to run in this country, it's not running that way. And that's what is something that needs to be deliberated on. That's what you need to be debating on, and that's what needs to change, Akhilesh. Then there will be a permanency to the changes. Otherwise, this will be ad hoc decisions and ad hoc cases. That's my point of view, Akhilesh.
There's another point to note here, Sujit. If you were an ordinary citizen, let's say you are a director of a company, and the board of directors have thrown you out in a very arbitrary manner, to use the Supreme Court's word. What are your options as an ordinary director of an ordinary company? You're going to go and appeal to the NCLT, and then after that, the next appeal is NCLT. Then after that, you go to the High Court, the Supreme Court. You may go in a writ to the High Court. The High Court will just send you back saying, "Hang on, this is not the forum to talk about all this." Now, for an ordinary person, the journey from his rights being trampled to the Supreme Court, where he gets relief, can be n number of years. But these privileged MLAs, they managed to reach the Supreme Court in such a short time, Sujit.
Akhilesh, I'm sorry, I missed your last question, please. I missed your last question.
So I was telling you about the journey of an ordinary man in the courts, such that
Yeah.
it takes years for him to reach the Supreme Court, where he gets a verdict which is then
Oh
unassailable.
yes. Oh yes.
In the case of these MLAs, who a lot of people would probably deride in their own ways, because that's the way politicians are dealt with in this country, they have the privilege of rushing to the Supreme Court so soon and also getting relief so soon. I mean, look at the major difference in the way the rights of an ordinary man is exercised versus that of a politician.
Absolutely, Akhilesh, absolutely, perfectly said. See, while the Honorable Supreme Court may have their reasons, which I'm sure they know, but uh, Arnab Goswami gets a hearing in a jiffy. Let an ordinary man try it. He doesn't, he or she doesn't. And Arnab Goswami gets it. So the fact remains that I think, I do not
And in
want to say
saying this,
this.
Sujit, in saying this, I mean no disrespect to any court of this country. I'm
Of
just
course,
pointing out the major difference in which rights are exercised as far as a common man is concerned versus a politician.
of course, I complete, not only politician, Akhilesh. I'm talking about not only politicians. I'm talking about people who have got who are powerful. Arnab Goswami is powerful. Arnab Goswami's case is a case in point, because look at the way courts got opened. He got his verdict. He was given relief. Fatafat, everything. But the same thing. How many of others are languishing? How many others are languishing? But the same privilege is not given to others. Is there a logic to this? There is no logic to this. In fact,
Right.
while this being said, I want to also draw your attention to a very interesting headline today, where Justice Chandrachud has made a very very pertinent statement. He said that it should be time that it's about time that we have to have a way to judge the judge. He says you have to judge the judge, and in the best way he says that you can judge the judge is by actually conducting, it's you can't judge a judge by purely his verdict. His verdict is not the only criteria in which you judge a judge. He says the way you can judge a judge is also by the way he conducts himself in the four walls of his courtroom. That's a very valid point he has made. He says that, you see, it should be, verdicts, court proceedings should be made public, and I completely agree to him. Court proceedings should be made public, and legitimacy to this will give legitimacy to the entire institution, and also accountability to the court, to the verdict. So I think this is one way of possibly combating it, Akhilesh. This is one way of possibly combating it, that so that we come to know we come to know well as to what happened in the court. Why was a person given a time fast, another person languishing, not given his day in court? Why a particular decision was taken? What was the logic behind that? Why are those MLAs suspended? Why did the court feel that that was not correct? See, these kind of questions can be answered. this kind of information can go to a common man. I think that was a very pertaining statement he made,
You
Akhilesh.
know, Sujit, I really like this observation of Justice Chandrachud. But let me point out something. I remember reading many years ago that what makes a judge powerful? What makes a judge powerful? He may be of the smallest of courts, Sujit, but what makes him powerful is the uncertainty behind him. You really do not know what judgment he's going to give, and that makes him powerful. This sense of transparency that Justice Chandrachud talks about will actually reduce the power of the judge, because now he's sitting in a glass house and people are watching him. He's basically now going to be sitting in a fish tank if that is what happens, and you'll be watching what's proceeding. You know, when there are matters of clients which are in courts and one hears things like, oh, you know, you got a bad judgment today because wo judge ka mood theek nahi tha, I give minus marks to the judiciary. When you hear something like, oh, why don't you engage that particular lawyer, he has got face value before so and so judge, you again give minus marks to the judiciary. The judiciary can't be arbitrary. The judiciary has to be seen to be very judicious, and that's how it is a judiciary. So this kind of a conduct of the court that he talks about, I think, would put the judge on the mat, and that would go a long way in repairing the kind of ills that we are seeing in India's judicial system at the moment. I like what he
Correct,
says.
correct. Akhilesh, going one step beyond this, I think this kind of transparency should be everywhere.
You know,
Everywhere.
you'll recall, Sujit, you have done episodes on it. Justice Jandan Gogoi's case, where he
Hmm.
sat in the court where his own matter was being heard.
Oh yes.
Was that transparency? It was
Oh
not.
yes.
And I
Oh
think
yes.
these yardsticks need to apply very stringently. At the end of
Correct.
the day, probably the only institution in the country where all of us stand up and a judge enters the room is only a court. And I think transparency is needed there.
Correct. But Akhilesh, like I said, I want to go one step further. I think transparency is needed everywhere. Transparency is needed in the Prime Minister's office. Transparency is needed in the Defense Minister's office. Transparency is needed in the Home Minister's office. Transparency is needed in every minister's office, every chief minister's office. Transparency is needed because a lot of things that happens, it is, Akhilesh, there is a concept of infantilization. Have you heard this concept, Akhilesh? Infantilization. Infantilization matlab, bhai, you know, a lot of us are treated like infants, saying that Papa knows what I am doing for you. Types. कि तुम डरो मत, हम कर रहे हैं. अरे क्यों कर रहे हैं भाई? What is that you are doing for us? Why are you doing this for us? And I think we should also be asking questions. That's exactly what I spoke about earlier on. You see, what happens inside the parliament today is a joke, Akhilesh. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 16 minutes, 60 minutes, and all are bills that there were days when bills were discussed for days together. Parliamentary committee was almost looking at every second bill, and then it was passed. So coming back to our original point is that while to conclude, while I believe that the judgment is good, the judgment is fair, suspension of those MLAs revoked, perfect, but the fact remains that this is not a permanent solution. The permanent solution will come when there is a definite rule, definite policies put in place where you talk about each bill that is being discussed, each bill that is being passed, each bill that has been deliberated, and what exactly, how much of deliberation has gone into a bill. This, I think, has to be made clear to every individual in this country. Then democracy will actually function. Then bills which turns into acts will actually mean something to us, Akhilesh. This is what I would say. you know uh, uh, Akhilesh, the next headline is also yours. I have run short of headlines. I have an headline, but I think you have a better headline than I have, I guess. So I want you to go ahead with your headline.
I have a headline which has to do with one of our most respected businessmen, entrepreneurs in the country, which is Kumar
Yes,
Mangalam Birla. I
yes.
immensely respect the man. Now, he says in a blog that he has spoken in that the coming decade in India is going to be what he called capex mahotsav, which is capital expenditure mahotsav. Now, where does he come from, Sujit? You see, in India, consumer demand has been falling. With consumer demand falling, why should any corporate spend money and build up capacity or invest in new projects? Reserve Bank is on record saying that the average capacity utilization among various industries in the country today is just about 65 to 70% at best. Now, if your capacity utilization is in the range in the 60s, it means you're not going to add to fresh capacity. It means you're not going to indulge in incur capital expenditure, capex as we call it. This is not something new. It has been going on now for almost 10 years, except that it has got far more accentuated in the last few years. What has happened today is that you are in an era where money is abundantly available. There's almost 10 lakh crores of surplus money lying with banks. They don't know what to do with it. And money is also cheap. Interest rates are low at the moment. The cost of funds is low. The expectation of the Reserve Bank would be that with money being abundantly available and cost of funds being low, corporates will borrow copiously and they will invest copiously in new projects. They will add to capacity, but they are just not doing that. Now, in a country like India, where demand is going to be anyway there because we are a young country, more than 60% of our population is in the range of 25 years of an average age. We are a country where the population is still growing. So you are going to have domestic demand, which will keep surging as the population grows and hopefully as the population becomes more prosperous. But last 10 years, almost nothing. Capital investments have been languishing, and that has been one of the main reasons why the economy has been slowing. He sees in his vision, I'm talking about Kumar Mangalam Birla, that how long are you going to be able to go on and function at the present installed capacity in the country? Demand is expected to shoot up, organic as well as inorganic. And so, according to him, the next 10 years are going to be capex mahotsav in India. That should be music to the ears of all of us who want India to grow. That's the first point he makes, Sujit. The second point he makes, before I put this headline to you, is that he says that finally the conservative economic parameters of cash flows and gross margins will catch up. You cannot have a situation where enterprises are making losses and they still have a huge valuation. And that, he says, cannot sustain, indicating, of course, that it is a passing phase or that it only applies to a few sectors. According to him, very soon, this reality will dawn, which is a company which has profits, which has cash flows, which has gross margins, will have a good valuation versus another which doesn't have any of these. So Kumar Mangalam Birla makes 2 points. He, of course, said many other things, but these two things caught my attention, which is we are headed to a capex mahotsav. And the second is that finally the metrics of gross margins, net profit, and cash flows will catch on when we talk about valuations and investments in the country. I think extremely wise words.
Yeah, absolutely, very wise words, and I'm happy that he thinks that way. My only submission, Akhilesh, here is that you see, while big companies can look forward to something, what can MSMEs look forward to? What is it for them? And finally, the biggest job provider in India are MSMEs, not big companies. With all due respects, see, I have huge respect for people who create wealth for the country. Wealth creators, I have huge respect, and we should have huge respect because wealth creators for this country are also people who make this country develop. So that's fantastic. Big companies is immensely important. Big companies should be given all kind of privileges. But that being said, what is it for MSMEs? Kya hai?
But Sudhir, you spoke about wealth creators who are, let me call it this way, wholesale wealth creators. And that creates inequalities in the country. The MSME is a retail wealth creator. It
Correct.
gives employment across the board, it gives livelihood across the board, it gives a sense of identity to the entrepreneurs. And its contribution to the GDP is about 54 to 55% of India's GDP. So they are the actual real wealth creators as far as the trickle down effect of wealth is concerned. I mean, you may have a Reliance industry with maybe a lakh of crores sitting in its cash account, in its bank accounts. That doesn't benefit the common man at all. On the other hand, if you've got 1 lakh entrepreneurs who have a total amount of maybe just 50,000 crores sitting on their balance sheet, that directly adds to the welfare, well being, and confidence of the common man. So, the real wealth creator that the country needs to pursue and see that they do is the MSME sector, and that's the most suffering sector today.
That's absolutely correct, and that's something that I was very much looking forward to, Akhilesh, and that's something that I don't see happening. I hope something is done in this budget, which we will hear from you more in the budget day. But I honestly hope something is done about MSMEs in the budget, and I honestly hope something is done about this GST taxes, and these taxes that has been, and this compliance that is actually throttling MSMEs in this country.
I'll tell you an offshoot of this, Sujit, which is very important to realize. Over the last 5 years in particular, the amount of digitization that has taken place among the entire processes in the country has shot up to unimaginable levels. So the government has got data about everything that you do. Your bank transactions, your capital market transactions, your investments, your business transactions, your spending, your purchasing, everything. They are sitting with data unimaginably. It's good. The government should know what you're doing. But the problem that has happened is they do not know what to do with the data. And that not knowing what to do with the data is resulting in a lot of unwanted notices being issued to the sectors, particularly the MSME, which can't bear the burden of that. And they are being issued indiscriminately. So the government is sitting on a lot of data. It has not yet evolved into matured processes on what to do with the data, and they seem to be acting upon each and every data that comes to them that they think looks suspicious. That is creating a lot of problem in doing business, Sujit.
Absolutely, Akhilesh. Akhilesh, shall we go into our next headline?
Which
The
is,
next the next headline is where we left off last time. You remember about Uttar Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh elections. So,
yes.
of course, that headline where we left off last time and we got disconnected may not be relevant today, but the fact remains that we were talking about Jat votes in Uttar Pradesh, Jat votes, which was traditionally with Bharatiya Janata Party now moving out uh, to possibly SP RLD combined, and that was what the whole discussion was. And of course, Amit Shah trying to invite Jayant Chaudhary back to back to uh, BJP, or not back to BJP but to BJP, and join BJP and work with them. So that was one thing that happened. Talking about Uttar Pradesh, Akhilesh, Uttar Pradesh seems to be very interesting. Uttar Pradesh is very, very interesting. Two reasons. A, because Uttar Pradesh is going to be a semi-finals for 2024. You see, so that is precisely why we said 2022 assembly election is semi-finals for 2024. I think the reason for that is Uttar Pradesh. 403 assembly seats goes for elections, and that's going to determine a lot of things. Akhilesh, interestingly, Uttar Pradesh elections may have direct ramification on the election of the president of India. So if Uttar Pradesh, if Bharatiya Janata Party doesn't do well, it will have direct ramification on the election of President of India. So that's going to be very important, especially before 2024. That's number one. Number two is, if Uttar Pradesh doesn't do well, it is going to have a huge impact on the NDA, people allied with Bharatiya Janata Party before 2024. So that's going to be the Bharatiya Janata Party's negotiation power is going to come down big time for 2024. Thirdly, most importantly, I think the opposition, which is now still now it is all over the place. There is nothing concrete. There is no Congress much. There is no TMC. There is no other parties. You see, they have not come. This opposition will be damn motivated, super motivated to come together and join forces. So whatever people like Prashant Kishore wants, or to put TMC aside and to put Congress aside, and all that may not happen. They may all come together, and there may be a formation of a very strong opposition. So in all fronts, Bharatiya Janata Party, for them, Uttar Pradesh is going to be very important. But let me tell you, Akhilesh, Uttar Pradesh, it is not that anything is lost for Bharatiya Janata Party. They are still in the running. They are tremendously. They are functioning there quite aggressively, and they are popular too. So it's going to be a neck-to-neck battle. But what has really happened is, in the last 1 month, SP's gain has been tremendous versus Bharatiya Janata Party's gain. So, to that extent, SP has been doing fabulously well in the last 1 month. But that does not mean that Bharatiya Janata Party has lost everything. They still have their Hindu voters. They still have their polarization strategy, which could work, which will work. They still have their core, a part of their core voters in place. But what they don't have this time is, like I said, the Jat voters, which had gone to them, the Dalits, which to a large extent had gone to them, so on and so forth. So that, I think, is still with them. But the point is, SP has actually taken a fantastic leap. Bharatiya Janata Party, though, is moving quite slowly, and of course, the anti-incumbency is with Bharatiya Janata Party. So that's what the Uttar Pradesh looks like. But it is anybody's game, and it is anybody's match. Even now, nobody can say who is going to win it and who is not. But yeah, I mean, to my mind, and whatever I understand from our people on ground, Akhilesh, our boys who are covering Uttar Pradesh on a daily basis on ground. There is a tough match. That's one's going to see. It will not be a sweep and all that. वो सब नहीं होगा. It is going to be a fairly tough match, is what one is given to understand. So that's one more topic that I wanted to share with you, Akhilesh. Any views on this, Akhilesh?
I talk more like somebody who hopes that the state of the economy of Uttar Pradesh should be an influencing factor on the elections more than anything else. And the state of the economy, as one sees it, is not the best to talk about. Inflation and unemployment remain extremely high. They are bothering every possible family in the state. And I think the voters should demand answers to these before they actually go to vote. But how much of fundamentals impact politics, especially in a emotive state like Uttar Pradesh, I think you would know better than me, Sujit.
Akhilesh, let's talk about this for 1 minute. I have some data to share with you. My figures may not actually be absolutely bang on, but all the same, I will be broadly correct. You see, 77% odd, or I think 79% odd people are very seriously concerned about unemployment in India. ठीक है ना? This is what the general and this is what the mood of the nation, India today's mood of the nation says. Okay, they are concerned. Even in Uttar Pradesh, I think 75 or 74% of people are very concerned about the employment issue in Uttar Pradesh. But the popularity of the Prime Minister of India is 79%. So what I do not understand and I cannot connect is, while you are concerned about unemployment, well, you're concerned about the average is around 75%. If you go to see, 75% people are concerned about unemployment, but 78% people feel that Modi is doing a great job, which absolutely beats me. I couldn't connect it. What could be the reason why we are thinking that way?
Sujit, I think it all has to do with, him having a connect with probably what appeals to the masses. And probably he as an individual is doing all that to enamor them. But it does not translate into the state machinery. So his individual portfolio looks to be interesting because that's what they are expecting a prime minister to do. But maybe the chief minister is not doing what they expect the chief minister to do. So there could be a major dichotomy between the two, I think.
No, but the point is, Akhilesh, job losses, job creation is a central government initiative. It is. That is what the finance ministry, that is what the commerce ministry, that is what the industries, and these ministries are supposed to do. When they are not creating jobs, ultimately, I mean, how much of it can you blame the state?
So what is expected of the center is certainly the need to create an environment which is conducive to investments and jobs. And that is where the entire issue is. And there the ball is in the court of the central government for sure.
Absolutely. So, Akhilesh, that's it. That I think we are almost just 5 more minutes to go. So, just to conclude, I want a couple of statements that from you. How do you think? I mean, how can I let you go without me asking you this question? How do you think the budget is going to look?
Sujit, there are so many. This time the amount of expectations out of the budget, I've never read that much more. Everybody has an expectation out of it. There are a couple of issues that we need to understand. All of us think that the budget should be a statement of vision. The budget should lay out a roadmap for the nation's economy in the short term, medium term, and in the long term. Raghuram Rajan recently made this statement himself again that he expects the budget to be a statement of vision. Unfortunately, that vision has not been there in the last few budgets. I do not expect it in this budget either, Sujit. So that's the first part, which is I'm talking about long term rollout of a plan. The second reality we need to understand is that the economy has not been doing good. And if you look at the budget as a statement of receipts and payments, then look at it like this: the receipts and payments of an entity whose fortunes are not doing too good are bound to dwindle. And the head of that entity does not have too much flexibility or leeway or bandwidth to be able to do something beyond what you thought he would have done. In other words, if you think that the government is going to now spend too much in the coming budget to revive the economy, according to me, where is the money? And they are not willing to think out of the box. So I'm not expecting this budget, Sujit, to be something which would really, thrill us or say, wow, what a lovely budget. I'm expecting this to be a budget where you will not see much changes happening in the tax rates at all. There's a lot of clamor in terms of give something back to the middle class. You need to reduce taxes on them, give them some incentives because their incomes have fallen. I don't think the government has the bandwidth to be able to do something substantially, and they don't seem to be in a mood to even do that. So you will have just tinkering here and there happening in my perspective. This would be just another ordinary budget, Sujit.
But this budget is a run up to 2024, Akhilesh. Wouldn't that be an important factor? More importantly, the budget is also before the elections. So, wouldn't that be election money? I'm talking about the assembly elections. Wouldn't that be a consideration?
Okay, so in that case, Sujit, look at it like this. In the budget or in the last budgets, they have anyway been doing so much of spending on your Manrega and Prime Minister Anna Yojana and all those stuff. What more are they going to add to it? They have already exhausted all those formulas. Then there is no some deep pockets available to now start giving some additional money that now you come up with the scheme. I'm talking very hypothetically that the Prime Minister comes up with a scheme of giving a free cell phone to every poor household. There's no such depth available at all. So your job, they have been doing the best possible they could do under Manrega. They have not been able to come up with some innovative thoughts or realistic thoughts. Let me put it this way: that hang on, jobs are not getting created, investments are not coming in because there's something to do with the ease of doing business and ease of earning in the country. And that's the real reason why they are not coming in. They are not accepting that reality. So, what are they going to be able to do? What populism will they be able to come in as far as election related budget is concerned? When we talk about budget, which is in the run up to the election, we are talking populist spending. Sujit, where is the scope for doing that? So, I really do not see. I mean, I see the barrel empty as far as further populist spending is concerned. I would be expecting, if at all the budget is good, and if at all I would say the budget is good, it would be that they are recognizing that inflation, unemployment, unwillingness of the private sector to invest, unwillingness of the consumer to spend is a real issue which is plaguing the public, which is plaguing the economy, and that needs to be tackled with immediately. I really don't see those kind of noises coming from the government, Sujit.
Absolutely. Good, Akhilesh. That is a very that is in fact, I mean, not I will not say it was very exciting ending because I mean, I was really hoping something from the budget, Akhilesh. I was really hoping something from the budget. Anyway, I
I hope
hope
I'm proven wrong.
yeah, I hope to for the first time. I hope to, but then that this seems to be the reality. We will catch you back on the budget day. And of course, every alternate day, let me remind my viewers, every alternate day, Akhilesh and I, 8:30 to 9:30, we'll be doing this headlines today, where we will be picking up 5 or 6 random headlines of those 2 days and talking to you about it, giving our views, our candid views on it. So that's it. And I thank my studio team back there in office to put up this show. Akhilesh, thank you so much for being here. And Let's catch up day after tomorrow on this same show once again. Till then, namaskar and good night.